Hi, this is George Mueller, and I've gotten a number of questions about how to write an effective essay for this class. And this is the kind of essays that you would write for the exams. And there's a system that I use that's based both on how Heartland teaches English classes and on the expectations of the organizations that set up the AP exams, which I've graded on a number of occasions. So that's a system that's kind of used by a lot of colleges, and it's acknowledged as being a good basic way to look at an essay. Now, this is not, and I want to make this very clear, this is not the only correct way to write an essay, but it's a very straightforward way to do it. And if you're starting out, this is a good place to start. You can start with this system and then make it more elaborate as you become a more advanced writer. Now, I know some of you are already more advanced writers, and you may write essays in different ways. That does not mean that that system is wrong or that you are writing essays incorrectly. So write essays the best way you know, but take a look at this, and this will give you a place to start from. The first thing I want to look at is the rubric for exams in this class. This rubric is based on a 10-point range. So 90 and above is considered an A, 80 and above is considered a B, 70 above is a C, 60 and below, let's not talk about that. This is intended to replicate the kind of essay that you would write in an in-person class during a single class. So we are not looking for a 10-page paper here. We're looking for about 5 or 6 reasonably organized, reasonable paragraphs. And I'll show you what an effective paragraph looks like in just a moment. This is based on a 10-point range. I think I already said that. So what we need to look at is the ideal essay. And one thing I should point out is I use what's called positive grading, and that is you start off with 0 points, and as you do things right, it builds up to an A. So instead of you starting off with perfect and me looking for flaws, I'm looking for things you did well. And to get a perfect grade, you have to do a number of things. For that perfect grade, you need to have a specific analytical thesis that answers the question from the prompt. You need to have 5 or more subclaims backed up by specific examples organized into an effective paragraph or into effective separate paragraphs, and you need to show some original thinking. To get that, all the points that you can, you need to go beyond what the book says and come up with something new. Now, it may not be new in the history of the world, but something that shows that you're thinking beyond just what the textbook says. These answers typically wind up being roughly, pardon me, 5 to 7 paragraphs long, because an introduction is really a good place to have that thesis, and then 4 or 5 body paragraphs. A conclusion is nice, not absolutely necessary, but it often does help people wrap up what they're thinking. And some people do like to put their thesis in the conclusion instead of in the introduction. That's up to you. That's a stylistic choice. So, we're going to go through the main parts of an effective essay. This is just reiterating what you need to have an effective essay. A main claim or thesis that answers the prompt, subclaims that prove your main claim, specific examples and reasoning that prove your subclaims, analysis, that is explaining the connections between your evidence and your claims, and this is where your original thinking can come in, and an effective paragraph organization. This is a good example of that introductory paragraph. In this case, the question is, why did the Catholic Church find it so difficult to prevent the spread of Protestantism? And yes, this is not from our class. This is from a 102 class. I didn't want to prejudice you in writing any of your responses for our class. So in this case, the student claimed, oh, and by the way, you'll see some slightly awkward phrasing and things. These are taken from students' in-class essays. I'm not going to grade you down if it's a little bit awkward. Since this is an online class and you have a little more time to proofread, I do expect it to be reasonably proofread, but I'm not going to be grading you on things like grammar unless I can't understand what you're saying. I may comment on it, but that doesn't mean I'm counting points off. Anyway, back to this question. Their response was, the Catholic Church found it difficult to prevent the spread of Protestantism because there were many multi-causalities involved. And what they chose to do here was to take their thesis and make it the first thing they said. They got a question, and they got a response right there. Could not possibly be more straightforward. And that's perfectly fine. History is very much related to legal writing. And in general, clarity is preferred over flowery and artistic writing. If you have a choice between making it clear and making it artistic, make it clear. That's not to say that there's something wrong with a little bit of elevated writing. That's perfectly fine. Clarity is just the preferred thing. So in this case, they started off with that direct answer, and then they gave some examples. They set the story a little bit with the Catholic Church wanted people to pay indulgences. Martin Luther disagreed. And then these are their examples of the multi-causalities. Luther summarized the economic, moral, and religious complaints of the people. That's great. They gave a general statement of what it was, and then a little more specifics further down in the paragraph. Fantastic. This is nice, both for you as the writer and for the reader, because you said, I'm going to tell you about these things. And they happen to have 3, so they're probably going to have more than one paragraph on a couple of them, and that's fine. This will help you as the writer remember what you wanted to talk about. So you can write the paragraph, then look back at the intro. Did I cover all of these? Yes, no. And as the reader, I can read all of those and then do the same thing. That's great. And here's an example of one of their claims with specific examples. Now this isn't, pardon me, a perfect A paragraph. This would be more of a B. Economics spread Protestantism for a couple of reasons. Noblemen wanted land that the Catholic Church owned, and the common people were at odds with the Church over paying the indulgences. So they have 2 specific examples of the ways that economics spread Protestantism. So noblemen were spreading it because they wanted land. Common people were spreading it because they didn't want to pay. Great. Here's a better paragraph. People saw corruption in the Catholic Church everywhere. One example was John Tetzel. He was selling, should probably be that. John Tetzel was selling indulgences in Germany using abusive practices like convincing elderly people to buy indulgences for dead relatives. That's a very specific example. And then they show that Martin Luther criticized the church, and people found him easy to believe because he was a respected monk who worked for the church, and his criticisms appealed to their moral understandings. These are both things that weren't in the book. I mean, the book talked about Luther working for the church, but it didn't say that that's why people believed him. So this person worked in a specific example, and then some nice analysis with original thinking. Kudos. Good job. So I hope this gives you some examples of what I'm looking for in an essay. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thanks.